welcome to the next episode of Point Black. I'm Adolphus Pruitt. I'm going solo today, but we're going to have a very, very good discussion. You know, has been extremely interesting, BJ, how everything that the Trump administration is doing is causing all sorts of uproars and have people spinning on their heads and just going through all sort of anxiety, and there's so much talk and stuff on social media, and I've been hearing a lot and seeing a lot and keeping up with it all. But BJ, sometimes you have to look through the noise to really get a better understanding of where the sound is coming from. And once you know that, you have a better idea of what people are actually trying to do. So, ladies and gentlemen, today I'm going to take you to Pruitt School. I just want you to sit back, listen, because I'm going to put something on you. So, out of all of the stuff that the president is doing, the thing that we all should be watching more than anything else is the stuff that he is finally starting to do as relates to the U.S. Department of Education. And some people say, why? What is the strategy? Why is it that the president is preparing executive actions to dismantle the Department of Education? And folks, let's be clear. The Department of Education was established by act of Congress, and it as a shell can only be eliminated by the act of Congress. But what good is a car that doesn't have an engine in it? What purpose does it serve if you can't start it up, it can't go frontwards, backwards? Without an engine, you can't even turn the wheels, because the engine connects to a motor and a fan belt that turns the power steering pumps that allow you to even turn the steering wheel in the first place. So I am going to break down for you what the administration is up to as relates to U.S. Department of Education, what the impacts are for African Americans, and I'm going to tie it into how the dismantling of the Department of Education will also ultimately suppress the black vote. Now, you hear what I just said. If I want to suppress the black vote, I want to run for office on a national basis, and I want to ensure that the black vote is suppressed without having to do all these other things. I can do it by shutting down the U.S. Department of Education. I told somebody that, BJ, the other day, and they said, boy, Pruitt, that's a stretch. I said, okay, I'll break it down for you. So the president is going to sign an executive order, I guarantee you, and it's going to do a couple of things. One, through the executive order, he's going to do workforce reduction. As he reduces, because he can't get rid of the department, so as he takes away its money, its funding, and it begins to furlough and get rid of the employees in the department is the engine. I just gave you the synopsis of a car and engine. The engine, without the engine, the car has no purpose. It just sits there. So And I'm telling you, he has, and these three things you're going to find that connect all of this is they're going to weaken the federal education infrastructure. By doing that, black voters' educational profiles and turnout are going to be impacted. And then there's going to be some downstream impacts on political engagement. And folks, here's how. So when the president bypasses Congress and he begins to transfer some of the core functions of the Department of Education away from it, one of the first things you're going to see him do is that he's going to push for the student loans to be ministered, and all that goes over to the Treasury Department. And this is not new. This was in Project 2025. It's in the playbook. Secondly, then they're going to delete staff capacity through mass administrative leaves. And remember, they put together the DARS, the DOGE, which is led by Elon Musk, who's already in the Department of Education, already is looking at what employees to get rid of to render it dysfunctional. So they're going to see these staff, to delete staff capacity. Then the next thing they're going to do is they're going to then take away funding. They're going to defund civil rights enforcement up under the Department of Education. Under the Department of Education, you have the Office of Civil Rights, which handles, now this is what I'm saying, folks, currently the Office of Civil Rights under the U.S. Department of Education handles about 17,000 discrimination cases on an annual basis. So now if your child or if the school district is discriminating against your child, or if the school had discriminatory practices and all of that stuff where you normally would go to the OCR, the Office of Civil Rights within the Department of Education, well, he's going to cut all of that, shut that down. And don't think he can't do it, because they've already done it for all of the civil rights actions up under the Department of Justice, especially those dealing with police departments and so forth and so on. And then here's the biggie. Then next, he's going to move, and I promise you, he's going to move to cut the $34 billion annually that they put out from kindergarten to grade 12 programs, including Title I. Title I services about $25 million a year to low-income students, and then there's another $7 million for disabled students under the Individual and Disability Act. So that means Title I is serving 25 million low-income students across the country. It's gone. He's going to get rid of it. Watch. That's going to go. And while the foreclosure is going to require an act of Congress, which I say is not going to happen, just watch. Over the next 18 months, you're going to see the Department of Education lose anywhere from 40 to 60% of its employees, and you're going to see all of its funding cut off. Now, what does that have to do with voting? Well, if you were to take a look at black educational attainment and voting patterns, folks, let me say it differently, so I'll make sure nobody misunderstands what I'm saying. If you look at how educated a black person is and what their voting habits are, that means if you say I only got a fourth grade education, when they ain't anybody 18 and over, you say 18 to 25, what are their voting patterns? I guarantee their voting patterns change based on how educated they are. And it goes that way all the way up the ladder. If you look at the numbers, education turnout correlation, 74% turnout among black voters with college degrees. That means black voters with college degrees, 74%, almost 75% of them will turn out and vote. It drops all the way down to 50% or less without a degree. And folks, let's make sure we understand. We're gonna take a break, but I want you to stay with me because we just talked about breaking down the Department of Education and we talking about voter turnout. We'll be right back with more on Point Black. And we're back. We're talking about the voting habits of people in the educational level. So 75%, you got a college degree, 75% of the black folks with college degrees, they vote. Now let's talk about the Southern concentration, because let's be clear, 60% of black voters live in Southern states. Ladies and gentlemen, 60% of our voting strength in this country resides in Southern states. And guess what? And in those Southern states, they have some of the lowest per student spending on education. Which means that the most significant voting bloc for African Americans in this country live in the Southern state, and they live in states where they spend less money on education than all the other states. We just talked about diminishing the Department of Education and taking away the $34 billion that they send to grades K through 12. We just talked about it. Now, if that money goes away, what do you think happens in the states where the largest block of black votes are? That means that now they're the lowest states with per pupil spending in the country. Now they're going to go in the basement. Then let's even go further. 42% of all black college students rely on Pell Grants. So now we're saying that which these Pell Grants, the president is going to transfer over to Treasury. He's going to take it away from the Department of Education. And where do a lot of these Pell Grants go? And a lot of these students go to HBCUs, which the cluster of them are in this concentration of southern states where the less per pupil spending is. And so these are the ones that are going to take the hits. Now, and I know you're saying, well, wait a minute now. So let me back. Let's just back up. Presidents go in the Department of Education, fire the people, take away their ability to fight for your civil rights and to fight discrimination in the schools. Then take away $34 billion for the 25 million low-income students who use that money in their schools. And the vast majority of those students and their parents who vote live in southern states where 57% or greater of the voting population of African Americans is. Who you think is going to be hit the hardest when the Department of Education goes? Black folks. And the children of the largest concentration of black voters are going to get hit the worst. And we just talked about the lower your educational attainment, the less likely you are to vote. Impacts. Long-term voter consequences is a given. Title I cuts, by the way, we talked about them taking that Title I money away. That's 8,700 high poverty schools. That's $650 million a year. That we predict is going to reduce high school graduation rates for black kids, which is now 79% compared to white kids, 89%. I'm saying that when he take away those Title I cuts, when they lower the funding in the schools, especially those schools concentrated in the South, that high school graduation rate is going to tumble. It's going to drop. Less educated, less likely to vote. Get rid of the loan servicing. Gonna move that over to the Treasury Department. It's gonna depress youth turnout because the loans. We project right now that by 2028, you're gonna see a minimum percentage, 5% percentage point turnout decline of black voters without college degrees by 2028. That's 3 years from now. That's 3 years from now, based on what he's going to do to the Department of Education. Political implications? Let's talk politics. Southern states, Georgia, North Carolina, Florida, both high black populations and education funding gaps face the greatest destabilization risk from the hit that he's going to do to the Department of Education. Young black voters, 45% without college experience, turnout for them is going to go and hit the tanks. What I am saying is, ladies and gentlemen, is that the destruction of the U.S. Department of Education, the dismantling of it, even though the shell may exist, will do more than anything they ever done to suppress the black vote in this country by simply dismantling, crippling U.S. Department of Education. And then I'm gonna show you the second greatest impact is going to have other than the voter. But BJ's got his eyes lit up. BJ, what I do wrong? What I say wrong, BJ? Go on, straighten me out, BJ.
Man, I'm not saying you said anything.
Okay,
I'm not saying you said anything wrong.
Okay, I'm
not doing that.
That's okay.
I'm not doing that. I'm just sitting there.
I love a challenge.
That some of the things that you were saying, I'm going, whoa. So, you talked about, them dismantling, like
Department of Education. Yeah.
Department of Education. You talked about them taking away employees. You talking about, the funding and, voting. I'm still trying to figure out how does all this tie into voting?
Because
maybe I missed something.
Maybe people's voting patterns have been determined by their level of education. The study says that if you got a high school diploma, here's the number of kids, black. I'm concentrating on African Americans. The number of African Americans who are registered to vote, 18 between 25 that vote. Here's their voting turnout. Here's their voting habits. 25 to 35. Here's their voting habits. 55 and older. Here's their voting habits.
So they went back and just said, okay, a person 18 to 25, this to that. They went in and looked at their education level.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, have to do studies on it all the time. Yes.
But okay.
Yeah, do studies on it all the time.
Really?
Yes.
And then they come up with this
Absolutely.
is their voting habit.
Yeah, come up with your voting because we know. BJ, I know who you are. I know your name. I know where you live. I can go now to the election place, and I can get your voting habits. I can tell you how many times, what elections you voted in, how frequent you vote. Matter of fact, they got a frequent voters list.
Really?
Yes. You can go to the election board and say, give me a frequent voters list for this city or that city district, And they would spit it out, give it to you electronically if you want, and say, here are the people who have voted in the last 3 consecutive elections or the last 6 consecutive elections. It's in there. They got to record it.
Really?
They got to record it every time you go vote.
So you mean to tell me every time I vote and don't vote, they keep up with me?
Yes.
Oh, man, I didn't know that. I
Absolutely.
didn't even know that.
Absolutely.
I wonder how many people out that's listening know that.
Yeah, if you're in the system,
Mm-hmm.
then each and every time you vote, for them to make sure that you're not voting, there ain't 3 BJs voting, and you only vote once, they have to know that BJ voted or did not vote.
Mm.
And every time you vote, it's recorded that you vote, and it's in the database. So
And every time you
if they had to
miss.
go back and audit and say, hey, we saying that there's 10 people live on your street and 10 of them registered to vote, and for some reason or other we got 12 votes off of this block. That's impossible.
Well-
because we know ain't but 10 registered voters over there, and we know who they are.
You know what? I just thought about something. What if voting was just like being in school and you got a grade? So you saying you
that
vote?
would be interesting.
You know, each time you vote, you know, you vote.
That
Each-
would be interesting.
Each time you miss, then you get like a detention or something.
That would be interesting. Listen, that would
I'm
be
just
interesting. But see,
If they keep up with it.
so remember, and so we know your voting habits,
Mm-hmm.
and we know who you are. You do the census. We know,
Mm-hmm.
you know, educational level. We know, you know, all that. That's what demographers do every day. That's
But what about the people who don't fill out the census?
and
they
if
vote.
they don't. No, I'm saying that if you vote, we know who you are because you're voting.
Right.
If you don't fill out the census, but it's still there's ways of determining what your educational level is.
Oh, okay, I got it. Okay, I got it. Okay.
You understand what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I get it.
We just,
I get it.
You know, cross it with your high school, cross it. You know, it's and especially if you're using Pell Grants and stuff like that. All that's in the system.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I know
all
that
that is in
you
the
know.
system. Yeah, I mean, no, it's data. You know, you would be surprised how much data is on you that is out here
Mm-hmm.
that they can get hold of.
Mm-hmm.
You'd be surprised, BJ.
Mm.
So, ladies and gentlemen, so we know what those voting habits are, and we know based on your educational level. And BJ, I hate to say it this way, but you know it too, just from the work you do here at the station and out in the community. You talk to young folks and older folks, and you talk to folks about voting. I talked to some older folks who said, "I'm the voting don't do no good."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, we did a presentation on Project 2025 at a church, and the mother stood up and said, "My son is 40-some years old, and he's never voted, and I can't get him to vote,
Really?
no matter what I tell him."
But
Yeah.
I wonder why that stigma is out there.
Well, they don't feel that people want to feel that when they cast a vote, that the results of that vote, they can see it, feel it, hear it, touch it, and see it trickle down and impact them directly. If they can't, and things seem the same, they go vote year in, vote year out, and according to them, things feel the same.
Mm-hmm.
Then they become discouraged. They're like they vote don't count.
Mm.
But it goes further than that. So there have been some additional studies. Now the one that how do I say that? That in Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
Baltimore did what they call the Safe Streets Baltimore analysis, which shows site-specific violence reduction ranging from 12% to a -9% based on education literacy. Other words, let me say it differently. They're able to determine how reading literacy in a community the lack of or the more of it impacts violence in your particular community. And we talk about it all the time, that reading proficiency has the ability to keep children from veering off into unwanted circumstances. It is a big factor at it. We did one study, BJ and ladies and gentlemen, where they were able to determine that the murder rate was directly tied to the dropout rate in that area. The murder rate directly tied to dropouts, the dropout rate in a particular school district, in a particular neighborhood. And because education it impacts some of everything. And what they're about to do with the educational Department of Education is just going to have an impact not just on the voting habits, but it's going to have an impact on the potential for violence in particular neighborhoods. And then to make it even worse, let's bring it to St. Louis. Let me give you an example.
That's what I was waiting on.
We were able to pull some stats, and 2012, 2013, 2014, and 2015 that basically showed that 90% or greater of the people who were murdered, the victims and the perpetrators, were African American males. That 90% of them had a past criminal history, which means they've had interactions with the law. 90% greater or greater had drugs or alcohol in their system at the time of the event, which means they were high on something. And 98% or greater have failed to graduate from high school. That was just murders in the city of St. Louis. That was 2012, 13, 14, and 15. 12, 13, 14, and 15. And then they did another study out of Baltimore, showed basically the same thing. And so what happens is that if you ever learn to read by grade 3 or 4, unfortunately, you don't catch up, but you continue to progress and eventually graduate, which means you graduate and your reading proficiency and your math are way below level, and maybe at third grade level. Now all of a sudden, you are underemployed because you don't have the skills. You're going to find a way to live and make some money, get your hands on some money, and so you wind up in the committing crimes. Result of that is jail. You get out. Your reading and math proficiency hasn't improved. You're older, but at the same educational attainment you had when high school, it may have gotten worse due to mental health issues. So now you have a past criminal history, and you're older and still can't find gainful employment. And so you find a way to survive. You find a way to live. And what happens then is that you wind up getting into some sort of situation where you kill somebody or get killed. And all of it is tied together. You can't get around it, unfortunately. In St. Louis, let's BJ, let's talk locally. Now, what do you do to fix that when you're in a school district that over 6 years, BJ, the school district, through tax abatement and everything else, you took away a few $100 million out of the school district that could have went for teachers, could have went for a lot of things. What do you do? Then on top of that, you're in buildings that are in need of significant maintenance. They are you have 200 people in a building that holds 1,000. You have all sort of issues that's going to cost you another $28-30 million just to maintain the existing buildings, and to keep them up to speed over the next 10-20 years, you're spending over $1 billion that you don't have. While at the same time, you have children, some at high risk, some may have some mental health issues, who deserve the best potential education possible. So what happens? Then you turn around and you destroy the Department of Education, you take away their funding. What do people believe is going to happen to those kids in those school districts? Do you envision that you can take money away? And that's what I ask you. Do you envision you can take money away from your existing school district, whatever amount of money they have now? Do you believe you can take some of that money away and the kids' education improves? Won't happen. It won't happen. It just won't happen. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back on Point Black. And we're back. You know, BJ, they ran some numbers on some additional impacts on this dismantling of the Department of Education. And one of them that jumped out, BJ, at me was, they said a loss of 340,000 Pell Grant recipients annually, Black recipients. That's almost 500,000 people on an annual basis losing their funding to go to college. And in most cases, a lot of them go to HBCUs. 340,000 losing Pell Grants. They also said that 400 million annually in early childhood education grant, which they said was going to result in about 230,000 low-income preschoolers not going to early childhood, not getting any early childhood education on an annual basis. 230,000 on annual impact. One, they got this program called the 21st Century Community Schools. They're going to eliminate it. That's a little bit more, almost 2 million students. And this is their after-school literacy program. So I want you folks to imagine that if your child is behind in school and literacy, and we just talked about the impact of their inability to get employment, things like that, imagine taking away the after-school literacy programs for them. And BJ, this teacher quality partnerships, that's on an annual basis, they projecting it's going to be 8,000 fewer literacy specialists trained to go into schools, in most cases into our schools, to teach literacy to those kids that are behind. Overall, the mental health I had no idea that Department of Education put $1 billion a year serving 5,700 high violence schools for school-based mental health services. That's going to go away. Project Serve is a trauma recovery initiative with crisis counseling in the schools. $50 million a year. That's going to go away. And then community schools partnerships that's funded through this. That's 11,000 violence prevention partnerships in our communities. That's going to go away. And we talk about, again, we start talking about voter turnout and education rates. So again, if our education rates, literacy rates continue to drop, they fall. Our graduation rates drop, less people graduating. Our literacy rates continue to go down the tank. And it's been proven that literacy has a direct impact on voter turnout. Eliminating the U.S. Department of Education does more to suppress African American votes than just about anything else. And BJ and I how do I talk about this? Why is it that we as a people have or accept a poor quality educational system for our children? You know, police shoot somebody, kill them. We're going to march in the streets. We're going to raise holy hell. We burn some stuff down. Politicians do some corruption. We're going to the polls, getting rid of them, tearing them down. School district producing illiterate or low proficiency in literacy children, and we keep quiet. We keep quiet. School shooting happens. We're running, ready to tear somebody's head off. At some point in time, we have to say that we're going to make sure that children in our schools, in our communities, learn and have the best opportunity to make it out of whatever situation they're in than anything else. At some point in time, we're going to have to make a decision that the one thing that we no longer will accept is a dysfunctional school district, or even more, a district that does not have the ability to turn our children out the way we want them to do. And I don't want anybody to say that, well, we're talking about the St. Louis Public Schools. No, I'm talking about all of them. The biggest mistake we make is to think that the only school district that is not, that where we have lower literacy rates for black children are all in the St. Louis Public Schools. That's the biggest mistake that we can make. Don't think because you don't live in the city or your kids don't attend school in the city, but they do somewhere in the county, that, oh, they're getting a better education. What I'm telling you is, look at the numbers. Every school district in the city of St. Louis and in St. Louis County, with the exception of Bayless, black kids are reading below level. Bottom line. And we have come to accept it, And now the administration is going to take the one thing that is put in place to specifically address that situation, and that is the U.S. Department of Education. And when they do, you might, BJ, they overturned Roe versus Wade. They thought that was something. The elimination of the U.S. Department of Education is equivalent to overturning Brown versus the Board of Education. It does not need to exist if we're not going to get the kids to help and give the schools, take away the funding from schools, especially high poverty schools. It just watch it, folks. It's coming down the pike, and just be ready for it. BJ, I think we're about done. I'm gonna get off my soapbox because it pisses me off.